There is a particular kind of silence that doesn't mean anything is wrong. It means something is being held very carefully in place, like a person gripping the edge of a table during an earthquake. You have probably felt it. You were talking to a woman you have known for a while, and something shifted. She didn't say anything dramatic, she didn't confess, she didn't freeze, but you walked away from the conversation thinking, something just happened, and I am not sure either of us is ready to name it. Most men at that moment do one of two things. They either assume she is not interested and back away completely, or they assume she is and push. Both choices are usually wrong, because what most people miss is the third possibility, that she is feeling something, she knows it, and she is actively fighting it. By the end of this, you will understand the 7 quiet behavioral patterns that almost always appear when a woman is wrestling with feelings she has not decided to release. You will also understand something more important, why the most obvious interpretation is almost always wrong, and why your next move matters far more than you think. There is a reason to keep watching. The final sign ties every earlier one to a single principle you have probably never seen stated this way. Let me explain why so many good men get this completely wrong. The mistake is not a lack of observation. Most men notice more than they give themselves credit for. The mistake is in the interpretation. When a woman sends mixed signals, warm one day, distant the next, most men translate that as indecision about him. And sometimes it is. But more often, the inconsistency has nothing to do with you at all. It has to do with her. There is a quiet, exhausting war that some women fight inside themselves. Not because they do not feel what they feel, but because they understand what it will cost if they let it take over. That cost might involve a marriage, children, a career reputation, a friend she has known for 20 years, or simply a version of herself she has carefully built and is not ready to dismantle. When you understand this, you stop trying to solve the signal and you start paying attention to the pattern underneath. The central principle of this video is simple, but most men miss it. A woman fighting her feelings does not behave like a woman who does not have any. She behaves like a woman protecting something fragile from someone she trusts to be near it. That distinction changes everything. And before we go further, let us correct one common misconception. A woman fighting her feelings is not playing games. She is not stringing you along for entertainment. She is also not unaware of what is happening. She is operating under an emotional constraint that you may not fully see, and her behavior will reveal its shape if you stop taking each moment as a verdict and start reading the pattern as a whole. One more thing before we begin. A single warm moment and a single cold moment mean almost nothing. What matters is whether the pattern keeps reappearing across weeks, across contexts, across the small moments when she thinks no one is grading her. Keep that in your pocket as we walk through the 7 signs. Now let's begin. The first sign is almost too quiet to notice. It is the rhythm of contact. Not what she says, but how she shows up. Pay attention to a woman you have been getting to know for several months. Watch how often she initiates a conversation, how she times her replies, and when she lets a message sit unanswered for a day. Most men assume that a woman who takes 12 hours to reply has lost interest. Sometimes she has. But among women who are wrestling with feelings, the opposite is often true. They are the ones who disappear at the exact moments they most want to write. They answer a work email in 8 minutes. They answer you in 5 hours. The delay is not coldness. It is restraint. It is the discipline of a person who knows that responding too quickly will sound like something she is not ready to say out loud. There is also the strange pattern of the late night message. Not the obvious one, the flirty, alcohol-assisted one, the quieter version. A typed phrase at 11:40 at night that says nothing romantic and yet sounds like she is on the edge of something. A song shared with no caption. A photograph of a coffee cup on her desk. These are invitations wrapped in plausible deniability. If you respond warmly, she doesn't have to admit why she sent them. If you don't, she has an excuse to feel safe about pulling back. The innocent explanation is straightforward. She is busy. She is tired. She is private. She simply doesn't enjoy texting. All of these are real and common. So, what makes this pattern more meaningful? Two things. First, consistency over time. The rhythm does not drift randomly. It tightens exactly when conversations get emotionally close and loosens when things settle into safe territory. Second, the content of what she sends, even during the gaps. A woman truly uninterested simply stops. A woman fighting her feelings keeps the door deliberately, painfully, half open. What should you watch for? Notice the timing of her most personal messages, not just the existence of them. Notice whether she pulls away right after you say something meaningful or right before. The pattern of approach and retreat, when respected, when rushed, is one of the clearest maps of what is actually happening inside her. The respectful response is to match her rhythm without rewarding the silence with pressure. Reply warmly, briefly, and go do something with your own life. Let her feel the cost of restraint without making the cost feel like punishment. She is watching to see whether your warmth collapses when she steps back. And that, by the way, is the real test. Not whether you are impressive, but whether you remain steady when she is unsteady. The second sign lives in memory, not what you told her yesterday. What you told her 3 months ago that she has no reasonable reason to still recall. Every man has experienced this once and tried to explain it away. You are somewhere having dinner. She mentions, almost casually, that you once told her your grandmother taught you to make bread, or that you hate the smell of lilacs, or that you slept on the top bunk in a shared room until you were 16. You forgot you had ever said it. She didn't. And she brings it up at exactly the moment when it serves no practical purpose. No plan depends on it. No joke requires it. It just surfaces. That is the tell. Most men assume this is simply good listening. Some people are better at it than others. That is true, and it is the innocent explanation. Nothing is wrong with a friend who remembers things. The pattern becomes meaningful when the remembered detail aligns with something emotionally charged. You mention in passing that you have never been able to talk to your father about money. 3 months later, during a conversation about something completely unrelated, she says, very carefully, I think about what you said about your father sometimes. That is not memory. That is custody. She has been carrying that information because it is part of how she understands you. Another version, she remembers a small preference you expressed once and quietly builds it into a plan. The restaurant she picks happens to have the dish you mentioned liking. The trip she suggests routes through a place you said you always wanted to see. She doesn't draw attention to it. She doesn't say, I remembered this for you. She simply places it in your path and watches to see if you notice. If you do, she has given you proof of care without ever having to claim it. The respectful response is to acknowledge the memory out loud, but gently. You remembered that. That is enough. Don't interrogate her about why. Don't turn the moment into a confession test. She gave you a small, brave thing. Receive it without pressure, and she will keep giving. Imagine a man who, hearing something like this, says, Oh, I didn't think you were paying that much attention. Watch how quickly she closes. She doesn't want her care observed under a microscope. The sentence, you remembered that, is grace. The sentence, I didn't think you were paying attention, is a verdict. Pick the grace. Now we move into a territory most men never examine. Watch how she behaves in a group. Watch what happens to her voice, her posture, her eye contact, when you enter a room where other people are present. A woman who has no feelings for you will treat you the same in public as she does in private. A woman fighting her feelings will often quietly, instinctively, dim herself around you when other people are watching. She might laugh slightly less. She might turn a fraction away. She might address her next sentence to the group rather than to you directly. She is not embarrassed by you. She is protecting something she has not named from being seen by people who might ask questions she does not want to answer. The innocent explanation is also very real. Some women are simply less expressive in groups. Some maintain professional distance in social settings. Some are private people in general. None of that on its own signals anything. So the question becomes what the contrast tells you. Watch how she behaves when the two of you end up slightly removed from the group, when someone walks to the bar, when the meeting breaks for coffee, when the others drift for 10 minutes. If her voice returns, her posture relaxes, and she leans slightly into you without being asked, that is the tell. She is saving the version of herself that feels something for the moments when no one can ask what it means. A more experienced man notices a different version of the same pattern. He notices that, in a group, she becomes more careful about what she says to you rather than less engaged. She chooses her words. She avoids flirting in front of the others, not because she doesn't want to, but because she has decided not to let other people see the inside of something that is not ready. The respectful response is never to put her on the spot publicly. Do not draw attention to the warmth you just witnessed. Do not say, "Why are you being so cold in front of them?" She has given you enough. The fact that she protects the private version of herself around you is, paradoxically, one of the clearest signs that the private version is real. A quick pattern interrupt. Have you ever noticed that the same woman who barely speaks to you at the dinner table finds a quiet reason to walk next to you by the elevator? That is not an accident. That is a women's psychology you have just watched in real time. Now we hit the midpoint of the video and the first real insight that reframes everything before it. Pause for a moment and think about this. The pattern is not what she is doing. It is what she is protecting herself from feeling. Look at how she disagrees with you. Most people have a default conflict style. Some avoid, some argue hard, some joke, some go quiet. Look at how she uses that default style with you compared to how she uses it with colleagues, with close friends, with anyone else in her life. You may notice something unexpected. She is more careful with you, not less. She is sharper with waiters, with coworkers, with casual acquaintances. With you, she chooses her words, she softens the edge, she apologizes faster, and she comes back to repair the conversation sooner. That is not because she finds you boring. It is because hurting you costs her more than she wants to admit out loud. The innocent explanation is obvious. Some people are simply more careful with people they like. That is true. But a careful man notices the direction of the softness. He notices that she will let a friend misunderstand her for a week without correcting it, but will text you within an hour to clarify something you didn't even notice she had been upset about. The cost of your misunderstanding is something she is willing to pay down quickly. The cost of someone else's misunderstanding is something she is willing to let stand. You also notice a second pattern. When she is hurt by you, she does not disappear the way a woman who has no feeling disappears. She resurfaces. She finds a small, dignified reason to be in touch again. She does not absolve you, but she reopens the door. That is the rhythm of a woman who is unwilling to let disagreement become the permanent state of something she cares about, even if she has not yet allowed herself to admit she cares. Now, here's the reframe that should change how you read everything above. The most common mistake men make is treating her mixed behavior as a verdict on him. She was warm yesterday and cold today, therefore she is confused about me. That framing misses the point entirely. Her mixed behavior is a verdict on herself. She is feeling something that complicates the life she already has, and she is using the inconsistency not to confuse you, but to manage something she cannot yet manage cleanly. The signs you have already seen, the controlled rhythm of contact, the memory she is carrying, the public dimming, the careful arguments, they are not a puzzle about her interest in you. They are evidence that the interest exists and that she has decided for now not to settle it. Once you can see that, the next three signs read very differently. They stop being signs of attraction and become signs of emotional self-protection. And that is the part most men never get to. If you have ever felt personally rejected by this kind of inconsistency, understand that the rejection was almost never about you. It was about her trying not to dismantle something she built. Now we are past the midpoint and the signs start becoming harder to deny. Watch how she speaks about you to others. Not to you, to others. A woman fighting her feelings has a peculiar way of handling the topic of you in conversation. She does not deny knowing you. She does not boast about you. She does something stranger and more diagnostic. She corrects other people's impressions of you, quietly, when no one asks her to. Someone misremembers something you said. She fixes it, accurately. Someone makes a light joke about you in a way that borders on dismissive. She does not laugh along. She shifts the subject with a small but unmistakable firmness. She does not perform loyalty because she has decided to be loyal. She performs it because she has noticed something unfair, and her instinct is to intervene. The innocent explanation is also real. She may simply be fair-minded. She may dislike casual mockery. Some women defend people instinctively as a personality trait. So what makes the pattern more meaningful? The selectivity of it. She is not correcting every unfair characterization in every conversation. She is correcting the ones about you, and only the ones about you. The man who pays attention will notice that she will let another friend be casually dismissed and say nothing. When it comes to you, she cannot. That is not friendship. That is territory. A related pattern appears in reverse. She also protects what she has said to you. Have you ever noticed her hesitate before sharing something you told her privately with a friend who is casually asking for gossip about your life? You may not have been there to see it, but if her close friends describe her as surprisingly private about you, when other people's relationships come up easily in conversation, that is another version of the same tell. She is keeping the inside of what is happening between you from being discussed by people who have not earned the right to that information. Picture a dinner where someone asks her, "So what's the deal with you and him?" Watch her face for half a second. The woman fighting her feelings will not smirk. She will not volunteer a story. She will give the smallest answer consistent with honesty, and then change the subject with the kind of quiet authority that says, "This is not a place where this conversation is going to live." That single half-second pause is one of the more reliable maps of what is happening inside her. The respectful response is to notice without making a show of it. A woman protecting the idea of you in front of others is offering you something most people never receive from anyone: advocacy they didn't have to ask for. Treating it lightly is a mistake. Treating it publicly is also a mistake. Receive it with the same quiet gravity she is offering it. That is what tells her the protection was not wasted. The sixth sign is the one that most often convinces men that they have been imagining things. The behavior is so inconsistent that it can look like nothing. It is also the one that most reliably indicates emotional investment without decision. Watch for the small constructions of need. A question only you could answer. A favor only you could help with. A recommendation request for something she could just as easily search online. A photograph of a broken appliance sent with the words, "Any idea what this means?" An invitation to an event she could attend alone, but didn't. She reaches towards you in these tiny engineered ways, and then, often within hours, constructs a reason to pull back. She answers her own question. She finds another way. She thanks you and then doesn't follow up. The cycle repeats. Reach, pull back. Reach again, slightly different. Pull back again. The innocent explanation is, again, very real. She may simply be one of those people who does not like depending on anyone. She may be inefficient at delegating. She may be testing the waters on whether you would be a good friend. But what makes this pattern revealing is the direction of it. With everyone else, she either asks for help or she doesn't. With you, the asking has a charge to it that disappears and reappears. She is using you, in a sense, as a safe container for the question she has not yet asked. Every small practical request is, underneath, the practice round for a much larger request she is not ready to make. There is a useful test a careful man can run. The next time she creates one of these small needs, do not answer quickly. Respond gently, but give her room. Watch whether she reopens the request herself. A woman who is simply delegating a task will let it drop when she decides you are not interested. A woman who is using the task to test the connection will come back to it, perhaps with an additional softener, perhaps with a confession that the task was less important than the act of asking. That second return is the sign. The respectful response is to make the help small and clean. No jokes about how often she does this. No commentary about the pattern. Just give her what she asked for in a way that lets her ask again without feeling exposed. She is, in her own way, teaching herself to need you. Interruptions during that process can stop it permanently. Now we come to the strongest tell, and it is not what most men expect. The seventh sign is not a single dramatic gesture. It is the master principle that ties all six prior signs into a single act, a slow, deliberate, voluntary handoff of her private self. A woman fighting her feelings has usually decided that she cannot afford to lose emotional control with you. So instead of giving you the full landscape of who she is, she gives it to you in trusted fragments. A story she has never told anyone, told to you on a Tuesday evening, framed as a small thing. A fear she has carried for years, mentioned in a context where the conversation could have gone 100 other ways. A photograph of her as a child, on a day when no one asked for photographs. A memory of a loss she did not want to relive, offered with the strange care of someone who has decided you are one of the 3 or 4 people in the world worth giving it to. Each of these moments is small on its own. None of them, individually, prove anything. But together, they describe a woman systematically handing you the most private material of her life in calibrated doses, and watching, each time, whether the material is safe with you. This is the master signal. Not because it is the loudest, because it is the most expensive. A woman who leads with her private self has nothing left to fall back on. A woman who gives her private self in fragments has a defense in case she is wrong about you. She is testing with each small piece whether you can be trusted to carry what you have been given without using it, exploiting it, or walking away from it. And this is where the master principle becomes clear. All 7 signs, the rhythm of contact, the precision of memory, the public dimming, the careful arguments, the private advocacy, the engineered needs, the piece-by-piece vulnerability. They are not 7 different signals of attraction. They are 7 versions of the same act. A woman fighting her feelings is not confused about whether she feels something. She is. She is fighting because she knows that what she feels will, if she allows it, change something she built carefully. Every signal you have observed is her way of moving closer to you while preserving the option of moving back. The restraint is not the opposite of the feeling. The restraint is proof of the feeling. Now, what do you do with this? Several things, and almost all of them are counterintuitive. First, do not try to settle her inconsistency. The most common mistake is to interpret a warm moment as permission to push. It is not. A warm moment from a woman fighting her feelings is her letting herself breathe. If you lean into it, she will often interpret the lean as exactly the reason she should pull back. Stay steady. Match warmth with warmth, but do not escalate faster than she does. Second, respect the gap. If she goes quiet, let her. Silence is not rejection. Silence is the cost of what she is carrying. A man who can be present without demanding resolution is one of the most disarming forces in a woman's emotional landscape. Many of them have never met one. Third, watch the pattern, not the moment. Attraction is not a verdict delivered in a single text. Friendliness, nervousness, mood, professionalism, all of these can produce individual signals that look identical to attraction. The only reliable evidence is what reappears across weeks and months and contexts. If she continues to give you the signs over time, in different settings, with different emotional stakes, the pattern is meaningful. If the signs arrive only in one context, only when drinking, only at work, only when she is lonely, they may not be what they appear.